The call came on a Tuesday morning, which I remember because I just finished my second cup of coffee and was thinking about whether to mow the back lawn before the rain came in. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. My daughter-in-law's name on the screen. That alone should have told me something was off. She never called me directly. In 4 years of marriage to my son, she had maybe called me 3 times. Always texted. Always short. Always something she needed. I picked up. "The mortgage payment didn't go through," she said. "No hello. No how are you." Just that. Flat. Like she was reading from a list. I stood there holding my coffee mug, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not surprise. Not even anger. Just the kind of stillness that comes when you already know the answer to a question you haven't asked yet. "Is that right?" I said. "It was due on the 1st. It's the 8th. I set my mug down very carefully on the counter. "I know when it was due." She sighed. Actually sighed, like I was the inconvenience in this conversation. "So are you going to handle it or not?" I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about a Saturday 3 weeks earlier when my son had called to tell me they'd done something spontaneous. He was laughing when he said it, the way he used to laugh as a kid when he'd broken something and was trying to make me find it funny too. He said they'd gone to the courthouse, just the 2 of them. Kept it simple. I remember the silence that followed. The way I stood in my garage holding a wrench I'd been using to fix a leaky pipe, not saying anything for a long moment. "You got married?" I said. "Yeah, Dad. We wanted it to be intimate. Just us." I didn't say what I was thinking. I said congratulations. I asked if they were happy. He said yes. She said something in the background that I couldn't hear. He laughed again. We hung up. I went back to fixing the pipe. "I want to tell you something about my son before I tell you the rest of this. Because if I just tell you the ending, you'll think I'm a hard man. And I'm not. Or maybe I am now, but I wasn't always. His name is Philip. He's 34 years old. He has my eyes and his mother's stubbornness and the smile that used to make me forgive things I shouldn't have. His mother passed 11 years ago. Breast cancer, caught late, gone fast. 6 months from diagnosis to the funeral, he was 23, I was 52. We got through it the way you get through those things. Badly, slowly, holding on to each other when we remembered to and falling apart when we didn't. After she died, I made a mistake that took me years to name correctly. I stopped saying no to him. I told myself it was grief, his and mine both. I told myself he needed room to find himself, that he was sensitive, that he'd had a hard year. And then somehow it was a hard several years. And by the time I looked up from my own grief, I had a 30-year-old son who had never held a job longer than 4 months and who called me the way some people call a bank, not to talk, to transact. His mother would have caught it earlier. She always had a clearer eye for these things than I did. I was a machinist for 31 years. Not glamorous work, but good work. Honest work. I retired at 62 with a pension and some savings and a small rental property outside of Dayton. A duplex I'd bought in my 40s as an investment, get rented out, maintained myself on weekends. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I'd build it with time instead of money. When Philip met his girlfriend, Renata, I thought things might turn around. She seemed driven. Had a job in marketing, dressed well, talked about goals. I thought maybe she'd steady him, pull him forward. Instead, she learned his language. Within a year, they were living together in an apartment I was quietly helping with. It started as a loan. 300 here, 500 there. Then it became the electric bill, then the car insurance, then half the rent. I kept the running tally in a notebook in my desk drawer, the way my father had taught me to track money owed. The notebook filled up faster than I expected. I told myself it was temporary. When they got engaged, Renata's parents threw a party at a nice restaurant downtown. Her father stood up and made a toast. He was a tall man in a good suit, and he talked about his daughter's future and his son-in-law's potential. Not his accomplishments, his potential. And I sat at that table and drank my water and smiled at all the right moments. Her parents never offered a dime. Not for the ring, not for the apartment, not for anything. They took photos and clinked glasses and flew back to Phoenix the next morning. I found out later her father was a retired orthodontist. 3 offices. Very comfortable. I bought the engagement ring. Philip called me and said Renata had seen one she loved. Vintage setting, old European cut diamond, the kind you find at estate jewelers. He said it was $18,000. He said he'd pay me back. I bought it. I told myself it was a wedding gift. I told myself it was a wedding gift. I told myself a lot of things. So, the courthouse wedding, the Tuesday phone call, the mortgage payment that hadn't gone through. Standing in my kitchen, I thought about all of it at once, the way you sometimes do, like a stack of papers falling off a desk, all those individual sheets suddenly in the air at the same time. Let me ask you something, I said. When you got married, did you not think I might want to be there? A pause. We wanted something private. 200 people at your engagement party was private. That was different. How? Another pause, longer this time. Philip and I needed this to be about us. There it was. About us. That little phrase. I'd heard it before in different forms. We need space. We're figuring things out. We're going through a lot right now. All the ways of saying we want what you provide without the inconvenience of your presence. I'll have to think about the payment, I said. She went quiet for a second, like the sentence hadn't computed. Think about it. It's overdue. I know. I said I'll have to think about it. I ended the call. I stood there in my kitchen for a long time. The coffee was cold. Outside, the clouds were moving in the way they do before an Ohio rain, heavy and slow. I watched them through the window above the sink. I thought about my father, who had come back from Korea with one good ear and a belief in hard work so deep it was almost religious. He bought a house with a 15-year mortgage and paid it off in 11. He never once asked his parents for money after he turned 18, not because they wouldn't have given it, but because it wouldn't have occurred to him to ask. He would have considered it a kind of failure. I thought about what he would think if he saw my notebook. Then I picked up the phone again, not to call my son, to call my attorney. His name is Arthur. We've known each other since we were on the same bowling league in 1987. He does real estate and contracts and the occasional family matter. He's the kind of lawyer who picks up when you call, even on a Tuesday morning in the middle of the week. I told him everything. The rental property, the duplex. I've been letting Philip and Renata live in the upper unit for 2 years now. Market rate in that neighborhood was about $1,400 a month. I'd been charging them $700. And even at $700, they were 2 months behind. I want to put it on a formal footing, I said. Whatever that looks like. Arthur was quiet for a moment. You want to proceed with an eviction? I want to proceed with an eviction? I want to proceed correctly, I said. Whatever the right steps are. He explained the process. Ohio requires written notice. A 3-day payer vacate for non-payment of rent. Sent certified mail or hand-delivered. If they didn't pay or leave within 3 days, I could file with the court. You understand, Arthur said carefully, that this is your son. I understand that, I said. All right, he said. I'll draft the notice. I want to say I felt powerful in that moment, that some cold clarity had descended and I knew exactly what I was doing and why. But that's not how it felt. It felt like standing at the edge of a diving board for the first time in 30 years, knowing what you're about to do, not entirely sure your body will do it. I spent 2 days thinking, not about whether to send the notice, about what I'd done wrong before. I kept coming back to the same year, the year after Philip's mother died. I remember sitting with him at the kitchen table, this very table, and he was crying, and I put my arm around him and I said, I'll always be here. You don't have to worry. I'll always take care of you. I meant it the way fathers mean it. I meant you're not alone. I meant I love you. He heard something else. That's not his fault entirely. I kept reinforcing it. Every time he stumbled, I caught him before he could hit the ground, and so he never learned what the ground felt like. He never developed a muscle. You only develop by falling. I did that. I own that. But I also know that at 34 years old, a man is not a child anymore. At some point, understanding why something happened doesn't mean you keep letting it happen. I delivered the notice myself. I didn't slip it under the door. I knocked, and when Renata answered, I handed it to her directly and waited while she read it. Her face went through several expressions in about 4 seconds. Confusion first, then recognition, then something that looked almost like anger but was trying to decide if that was the right strategy. "What is this?" she said. "It's a pay of Akate notice. You have 3 days to bring the rent current or make arrangements to leave." "You're serious?" "I am." She looked at me the way people sometimes look when they realize a situation has changed and they don't yet know all the rules of the new situation. "Philip is going to— You can talk to Philip," I said. "I'm talking to you right now, as your landlord. The notice is legal. Arthur drafted it. If you have questions about the process, he can explain it." I left. Philip called that evening. I let it ring through to voicemail, then listened. He sounded shocked, hurt, genuinely confused, which told me Renata had framed it as something I'd done out of nowhere, not something that followed from anything. He said he thought we could work it out. He said he didn't understand why I was doing this. He said he needed time. I called him back the next morning. "I love you," I said, before anything else. "I want you to know that's not in question." "Then why?" "Because I have been taking care of you for 11 years, I said quietly, "and I've done you a disservice. I should have said this a long time ago." He was quiet. "I paid for your apartment when you were 25. I paid for the car. I paid for the ring. I've been subsidizing your rent for 2 years. And you got married without telling me. You let me find out in a phone call from you, laughing, like it was a funny story to share. Dad, we just— I know. You wanted it to be about you two." I let that sit for a moment. "I'm 63 years old. Your mother's been gone for 11 years. You are my only family, and you didn't think I should be there." He didn't say anything. I could hear him breathing. "I'm not evicting you to punish you," I said. "I'm doing it because I should have made you figure things out a long time ago, and I'm sorry that I didn't. That's on me. So what am I supposed to do?" "Get a job," I said. "A real one. Keep it. Pay your own rent. I think you're capable of all of those things. I always have." They didn't pay within 3 days. I filed with the court. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, Renata's parents arrived from Phoenix, first time they'd visited the rental in 2 years, and stayed for 4 days. I don't know what was said between them. I wasn't there. On the day of the hearing, Philip and Renata didn't contest the eviction. Arthur told me later that Renata had hired a lawyer briefly, but let him go before the hearing. They were out by the end of the month. I heard through a cousin that they moved in with Renata's parents temporarily. Her father, the retired orthodontist, apparently had a lot of opinions about financial responsibility. I found that detail quietly satisfying. For a while, things were just quiet. The kind of quiet that's uncomfortable because you're not sure if it's peace or just absence. I rented out the upper unit properly this time, listed it at market rate. A young woman took it, a nursing student named Linda, punctual with her checks, quiet on weeknights. I was grateful for the straightforwardness of it. Money on the first, every month, no stories attached. Philip and I didn't talk for almost 2 months. I won't pretend that was easy. There were nights I sat in the living room with the television off, thinking about him at 10 years old learning to ride a bike, thinking about him at his mother's funeral holding himself together the way young men do when they're not sure they're allowed to fall apart, thinking about all the versions of him I had loved before, the version of him I had finally had to stop enabling. He called on a Sunday in April. He said he'd gotten a job logistics coordinator at a distribution center outside of Columbus. He said it wasn't glamorous. I told him I'd walked a machine shop floor for 31 years and not a single day of it was glamorous, and it was still good work. He laughed a little. Small, careful. "I'm sorry about the wedding," he said. "That was wrong. I know it was wrong." "Yeah," I said. "Renata thought— It doesn't matter what she thought. I should have said no. I didn't have a speech prepared. I'd thought about this conversation a lot, and when it actually came, I didn't have the words I'd imagined. I just said, 'I know you loved her.' That doesn't make it easier to say, but I know it." He was quiet for a moment. Then, we're not doing great. I don't know what's going to happen. Okay, I said, one thing at a time. We talked for an hour. Longer than we'd talked in years. Real talking. Not the performing of a relationship, not the maintenance of a financial arrangement, but actual talking. He told me things about the last few years, about feeling like he'd gotten lost somewhere and hadn't known how to find his way back without admitting he was lost. I told him about his mother, stories I hadn't told him before because they'd felt too raw. We cried a little, not in a dramatic way, just the way men our age cry when we finally say the things we should have said earlier. People ask me sometimes, or they would if they knew the story, whether I regret it. Whether I regret drawing the line so late, or drawing it at all, or the way I drew it. The honest answer is that I regret the years before. I regret that I mistook indulgence for love for so long. I regret that I waited until a Tuesday morning phone call, delivered without a greeting, about a mortgage payment, before I finally understood what I'd built. I don't regret the notice. I don't regret the call with Arthur. I don't regret any of what came after. The duplex is still mine. I still mow the lawn when it needs it, and fix what breaks and keep the books the way my father taught me. Philip is still out there figuring out what it means to stand on his own. That's hard. It should be hard. It was always supposed to be hard, and I'm sorry it took me this long to let him find that out. His mother was better at the hard parts than I was. She could love fiercely and still say no, still hold the line, still let him feel the weight of a consequence without flinching. I learned that from watching her. I just forgot it somewhere in the grief of losing her. I'm trying to remember it now. That's all any of us can do, I suppose. Remember what we forgot. Do better than we did yesterday, and hope the people we love are still there, on the other side of the hard parts, when we finally get it right. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since all of this happened. Not in any mystical sense. I don't put much stock in the idea that the universe is keeping score, but I do believe that what we build, we eventually have to live inside. And what I built for 11 years after my wife passed was a structure where Philip never had to carry his own weight. I hammered every beam of that thing myself. I thought I was building shelter. I was building a cage. For both of us. Renata didn't create my son's helplessness. She just moved into a house that was already furnished that way. That's the part I had to sit with longest because it would have been easier to make her the whole story. And she wasn't. Here's what I understand now about cause and effect. It doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't come with a warning. It accumulates quietly, the way water damage does behind a wall. You don't see it until something gives. For me, that moment was a phone call on a Tuesday morning. No hello, no warmth. Just a woman telling me a payment was late. A woman whose wedding I had not been invited to. A woman who had, without a second thought, decided I didn't fit in. That sentence did something to me that a lot of gentler moments hadn't. It showed me clearly what I had allowed myself to become in my own son's life. Not a father. A function. The ethics of what I did next. The notice, the court filing, the eviction. Some people would call that cold. I've had people say it to me directly. He's your son. As if I'd forgotten. As if love means you absorb every consequence, so the person you love never has to face one. I don't think that's love. I think that's fear dressed up as devotion. I was afraid of losing Philip, and so I kept paying to keep him close, and somewhere along the way I lost him anyway, to comfort, to dependency, to a version of himself that had no reason to grow. Real love, I've come to think, has an honest edge to it. It tells the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. It lets people fall because falling is how you learn what you're made of. My father knew that. He would have known it the moment I started keeping that notebook, not with pride, but with worry. Philip is figuring it out now. It's slow, and it's not a straight line, and some weeks I don't hear from him, and I sit with that. But when I do hear from him, I'm talking to a man who is building something, not just waiting for something to be handed to him. That matters more to me than I can easily say. I'm 63 years old. I still fix my own leaky pipes. I still keep the books the way my father taught me. I still believe that a person's character is mostly the result of what they've been asked to do and what they've been allowed to avoid. I got that wrong for a long time. I'm trying to get it right now. That's not a lesson I arrived at easily. It cost me a lot, and it cost Philip more than he knows yet. But some things you only learn by finally stopping the writing of checks, stopping the explaining away, stopping the quiet surrender that you told yourself was love. When I stopped, everything shifted. Not immediately, not cleanly, but honestly. And honest was the one thing we hadn't been with each other in years.